When you see someone like the Pope and he's got the staff with the pine cone on it, not only is that interesting, but he's wearing a mitre hat. The pine cone symbol is probably the most popular of all. In fact, it's actually scary when you look into it, how common it is with the elites and places beyond, I guess, the perception of people. Like, for instance, going to a place like the Vatican Archives or going to the Vatican itself and finding these giant pine cone statues outside, and the staff that the Pope wears has a pine cone built right into it. What does this mean? Within the Aztec and the Maya, there's been estimates today by some researchers who have studied that we've lost 90+% of everything ancient in terms of writings and artifacts and describing their story from that region. They literally stole or burned everything. And to this day, the majority of those documents, do you know where they are? They still exist.
Where?
The Vatican.
How do we know that?
Because there have been whistleblowers that have talked about what's down there. And
Who are these whistleblowers?
I'm not going to name any names.
Well, let's name names.
I can't name names on the podcast, but I can tell you
people who have hit you up and said it.
They have. Let's just say the Vatican Library has an entire collection of Maya, Aztec, Egyptian, as well as ancient Sumerian tablets, because we had 30 to 40,000 cuneiform tablets that have come out of the Ashurbanipal Library and the libraries of Ebla. And to this day, I've only been able to track down roughly 10,000.
All right, I don't doubt there's some crazy shit at the Vatican. Don't get me wrong. But I need to ask you, are you getting this from friends in the field who have sources, or are you getting this from people reaching out directly to you? I'm getting this from friends in the field that have sources. Okay, and but have you challenged where they got that from?
I'm not going to challenge the fact that they exist there because it's come from so many different places saying that.
Yeah,
and from
but
the history
that can spread
well,
fast.
But it's not just from that source. It's from when they discuss when they were there.
When who discusses when they were where?
When archaeologists and researchers look into when they conquered that region, and then when they brought everything back, they discussed how it went back to Spain first.
So how do we know that it ended up at the Vatican?
Because the Vatican was the head of the Catholic Church. And the Vatican is the powerhouse behind why they went and conquered the Americas. Because Spain was an empire, and that empire was religion was a huge part of that empire.
Sure, That's verified. Yep,
yeah, and absolutely. So based on that, what we find from not just that example, from a lot of others around the world, the way that, this is my theory, I won't say this is fact, but the way that I believe that they've hidden so much of history from as far back as maybe even like the Roman Empire, and that's speculation, but that they, instead of just burning things, they can't do that for everything, because I think there's some respect that exists within some of the upper echelons to not destroy things. And I say that because there's so many sites that they could have just wiped out, but they didn't.
But they did wipe out a lot.
Well, like Eridu and these sites in Turkey, like they just sit there. Like they could just, they don't though. They don't wipe like I think there's some respect with ancient culture still, to a small degree, even in those places.
Respect is an interesting word.
Very small.
For you to use in the same context of how you're bringing this up.
Well, but not for the people they conquered. I want to make that very clear. The respect for the people that were before. They know there was an ancient ancestral group there. Just like look at Baalbek, Lebanon.
Ancient ancestral?
Yeah, like before the Maya and the Aztec that they conquered was in a much more ancient group that lived there.
And they believe that that is the basis for the things that they are discovering.
Exactly.
Okay.
So those other cultures had really nothing to do with that in the same way. They like maybe carried some of the writings down and passed some of them, but they didn't really understand the same way. And that was very clear to me when I kept studying sites with things that would just disappear. And I'd never see them again. A lot of people believe that, and I've done research and I believe as well, that it is a central storehouse, the Vatican Archives, is a central storehouse for anything that doesn't fit in the conventional narrative. And I think it's an easy way to catalog and hide something, and I don't think that it's necessarily not going to come out of there again. We have photographs.
Okay.
You want to pull one up really quick? Vatican Archives. You'll find some photographs that have been taken And to get in there, you can only be a very, very high level individual, or you have to, as well as that, or you have to have something specific you're looking for. They do not let you wander around.
Ooh, this is it.
There you go,
here?
right there. So that's the Vatican archives.
How far below ground is this?
I don't know that. I don't know exactly how far down it is.
What's that, Alessi? Can we also click that other one, the second from the top? No, from the top.
This one?
No.
Down
one. Yeah, no. Back. Yep, that one.
So there you go. There's an example. Now, what you have here is a collection of Gnostic texts, ancient Hebrew texts. You have ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian.
Is that King Charles and Camilla in the
I can't
archives
see. Is it?
right there?
Pull it up. I don't know.
Third one down.
There you go.
Indeed, it is.
They're like taking a little tour. They're like, oh, this is nice.
This is very nice in
This
here.
is very nice in here.
Yes.
So imagine that they do have a little bit of respect for the ancient cultures and what they taught. And so instead of destroying it, there are a lot of things.
Keep it keepsake.
They keepsake for now. Someday, I do believe that there is an intention to release all of it.
Release all of it.
Yes.
What makes you think that?
We got to stop pretending that the power structures that are in charge of certain aspects of history and decisions, because I do think that exists, is not planning on some kind of a changing or changing of our understanding. A disclosure of some kind, exactly.
The Vatican. If what you're insinuating
in the
here
future,
is correct,
I think in the future.
that's a big what if.
Well, imagine though that things have to happen first before that happens. Like things like the whole narrative of our history changing. I think it'll happen down the road. Down the road when we're in a very different society, we're in a different mindset than we are now.
But let's take the argument, hypothetically,
that it never will ever be shown.
All secret societies have existed, the main ones, have existed for so long and they've never disclosed shit. And the whole point of the secret society is that it's secret.
Right.
Why would they suddenly be like, you know what, open, let's go? And that's why so many people are questioning like the UFO disclosures and stuff right now. Righteously so, by the way.
I would
That's
too.
a very fair question.
I do.
No?
I think it's part of the same thing. I think personally that even if the UFOs and the UAPs that they're describing in all these photographs, even if most of them are just government technology, that's what I think. But it doesn't matter. It's changing our collective. It's changing our minds of opening up the possibility of what exists, that we're not alone. That is so huge, because even something as fundamental as walking outside and like looking up at the night sky, maybe not in New York City because you guys have a lot of lights, but walking out in the country and looking up and realizing the vastness of the universe and what's above you, don't underestimate how few people do that.
Yeah.
They're focused, right? They have this, right? I gotta go to the store. I gotta go to the bank.
right.
I gotta get gas. Oh shoot, my friend wants to have me to go meet him somewhere.
That's right.
They're not even looking up.
That's right.
They like almost forget they're on a planet that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, that's passing through space and revolving around a giant star. Like, we forget. We forget about that.
I do all the time.
Well, you forget about that all the time, too.
All the time.
That's what we're talking about here. I at least love that UAPs and UFO stuff that's happening, regardless if it's staged or not. I don't care, because at least it gets, I think that's the point, is to get our mindsets to start changing, because as a collective, I think they know what's coming. I do. I think they know what's coming, and I think that it's all part of like these pieces being put in place to eventually allow us to have disclosure, but in a way where it doesn't destroy all the systems that are in place right now. Slow trickle it, right? You go, like I was just with an Uber driver coming over here. You never know who you're gonna meet. This just Uber driver guy is like fascinated by lost civilizations and stuff. The average person is becoming really interested in this stuff. And
Depends where you look, but yeah.
It's not everyone, but a lot of people are starting to be interested and curious about this. And people like Graham putting Ancient Apocalypse out is helping change and push that narrative forward.
Right.
And that's what I mean, is I do think there'll be a time
where the Vatican has to release the shit that they stole and pillaged and throughout humanity, and have to say that like, oh, sorry, we did this, and I hope we still exist tomorrow, by the way.
I don't think it'll be in the same. I don't think it'll be the Vatican like we think it is today. I do think that we're going to have some major power shifts in the future in our lives.
Why do you think that?
Well, because it's unsustainable. Any empire is unsustainable. And that's the world has turned into this trifecta empire of, like, right, London being this independent state, financial state part of the world, and then you have the Vatican being this religious state in the world with this independent state that's not even part of the other the country it's in. And then you get Washington, D.C., the same thing with this military power. I just think that trifecta runs the world. I do. I think that three trifecta runs the world. And
from a business perspective, the Vatican's the one I just don't know enough to say, but from a business perspective, if you're looking at the most recent empires, which is the United States and the UK, sure.
That would be how you would run everything. You would need that there would be three ways to run things. You would have to have financial capital, the religious capital, and the military capital. Those three could run everything. And I think they do. I do. I think they do. And so the Vatican's part of that. I think that control, though, will eventually change. I think that structure that's in place that keeps everything I can't say that word.
You're not saying carte blanche.
No. In a nice little box, a nice little order here, right? I think that is eventually we're gonna see that these little boxes of information that exist within only sects of individual that are like, these staggered understandings of things. Like, for instance, I don't think the Pope is the highest individual there at the Vatican.
Who is?
I don't know, but I've.
What makes you think that?
Again, there's a lot of, if they're credible or not, and I don't want to go down that road, but there are a lot of individuals that have studied this very extensively, and I'm somewhat one of them that believes that even presidents and the Pope are all just puppets for something more powerful.
I think that's a reasonable hypothesis. I think we got to be careful to say it's a hypothesis. I share your hypothesis, for example, with the United States. Like, I think the president's important, but just a lot of the guys around him, they were there before he got there. They're going to be there after he leaves.
Which is why someone like Kennedy could be assassinated as easy as he is.
That's right.
Right? Because in the end of the day, he doesn't have ultimate power over his situation. We were just talking about that last night.
There's a few bullets that say apparently he didn't.
And so that just shows you that even if you're president, you piss enough people off, just like that, you can be gone.
I wonder how easily that could happen today, though.
I don't think it could happen like it did back then.
That was a turkey shoot on live TV.
And I also think that all those things they used to do with everyone disappearing, I don't think that can really happen anymore with how interconnected we are.
It's hard. It can still happen, but it's harder.
If I leave here after we're talking and no one ever sees me again, I'm pretty sure that won't go unnoticed. Okay? I'm just saying is that, but back then I think that without having computers and phones and everything, it was easier for someone just to, whoop, where'd they go? I don't know.
Sure.
Right? But what I'm saying is the point of all that, to say that is I think that things are changing in a way that they haven't really been before. We haven't had all this technology and all these things. And eventually information is going to get out enough, that 1% we talked about, to shift that collective.
And what does that do?
What happens is, imagine humanity is like a singular organism, if in terms of consciousness. And we have what's called a collective consciousness. It means that we all live in a reality together, right? And we share ideas, but there's this driving direction of humanity based on the average amount of people that believe in something similar. Like, the average person goes to work and gets up, pays their bills, and they have a certain mindset of doing life and doing these things. I think that whole thing, though, is shifting. Is that whole dynamic of the way we used to think and see the world, and I don't think we should stop comparing to what hasn't happened before. Like, the Vatican Archives hasn't released anything, and they're powerful and whatever. So how can they not be that in the future? We need to not measure the future based on only the past. Okay, it's important to look at the future in a way where it's changing so fast, so exponentially that buckle up, because we have no idea what's about to happen.
But there's new ways. As things change, so does everyone with it, including groups and structures that have power.
So that's the collective.
And I'm saying, like, the way that you hold a grip on power can change. And yes, we see empires change because they fail to adapt to that, but another empire replaces them. Right, another central power structure.
Why do you think it always has to be empires, though?
Because that's how the world has been. There really haven't been. I mean, like, when you look at pockets, even we're talking about South America, for example, right now, before we got on this little tangent. Even there,
The Inca were an empire.
Yes, you had your empires. You could say the Aztecs had some form of an empire, right? You could say the Mayans had some form of an empire. World history, if you go through like a timeline, I was looking at something earlier. Maybe I still have it. Yeah, here we go. I was looking at this timeline of empires throughout history. It's continuous. You go from the Akkadian Empire to the ancient Egyptian Empire to the Hittite Empire to the Assyrian Empire to the Persian Empire, Macedonian Empire, Roman Empire.
Well,
is that Maurya Empire, Han Dynasty, Byzantine Empire, Islamic Caliphate, Mongol Empire, Ottoman Empire, Mughal Empire, British Empire, Russian Empire, Spanish Empire, French Empire, Japanese Empire, Soviet Union, United States.
Okay, well, guess who wasn't an empire? The Sumerians. And guess who wasn't an empire? The Ararat civilization. What we're talking about here is a time period of history when we became extremely warlike and violent.
Wait, but what's the point there? That they weren't empires? Because
our mentality and what we can do with civilizations and become is not. We shouldn't be based on that one option. Because we've seen in history that some ancient cultures weren't empires. And I would actually interject in my personal belief in what I've studied is that based on when we look at murals from ancient Sumer in that area, you find two things happening. One, there are depictions like you see with Haldi where it's like a person with a regular head passing knowledge. But in Sumer, there are depictions of eagle-headed gods with wings. Eagle-headed. And they're passing knowledge too. Well, what kind of knowledge do you think they're passing? For instance, the patron god of the Roman Empire, most people might not know, his name was Ninurta because his symbol was the Byzantine double-headed eagle. That was his symbol in ancient times. And then the Roman Empire used that and that became their symbol, okay? What I'm suggesting and what I've studied based on tablets and looking at history and how civilizations can change based on different influences is that there was a time period in history when the knowledge of how to create war empires was passed to us. And I mean like entire war empires. Because if you're passing knowledge to someone, let's say Julian Dory lives out in the forest and doesn't know anything about the world and he just lives in his little life and he does his thing. I walk through the forest one day on a walk. I find Julian over in the bushes. Hey, Julian. And I start talking to you. And you have no education. You don't know anything about the world. And I start teaching you something. I could pass knowledge to you in many different ways, couldn't I?
Yes.
I could be like, hey, dude, listen. Go take that stick over there and sharpen the head on it and you could make a weapon. And you could go kill that guy with it. Or like even more sophisticated means, like arrows, different things, right? I believe, and it's part of what I've studied, is that there was a decision made or some influences to control us to become warlike. And I think that that's held us back. Potentially one of the greatest things that's held back our karmic growth. And maybe that was
what karmic?
If you're in a war and you don't want to be in it, right? You're in a kingdom and you have a king, and they're like, we're gonna go to war with this country. Band together with me. You get in your army, you're marching, right? You go to war, you're fighting, you kill people. How is that going to haunt your karma? What is that going to do to your next life? Think about it for a second.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to. Like, you were forced to do it, but you still killed somebody. Okay? I think we should not underestimate how lifetimes of killing and being in war could affect our entire karma and our path going forward. Like keeping you trapped in a loop where you keep doing all these bad things, even though you don't want to, and it makes you stuck there and you can never ascend to a higher place. It's almost like being in a prison of incarnation. Yes. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
My own personal belief is that may have been a tool used against humanity by some of these jealous gods, like I mentioned, like in the Nag Hammadi, right? The Gnostic text, you find out that, again, that some of these influences that are part of our story, the Anuna, some of them hate humanity. Like, they don't believe that we should have the gifts that we have because they don't think we deserve it. They believe that we don't deserve the gifts we have because we're too mature and different things. And so there's been jealousy and issues in that area, and that makes me wonder if you wanted to hold a sentient being back, who's got a soul and a karmic responsibility, there would be literally no better way to do that than to force it to be constantly fighting in wars. Because not only would that really destroy that pure place of a culture, like learning wisdom and knowledge, and then converting it to a place of just being a war culture, but you would also have another really big problem. What about all those cultures that didn't have war as their central point? What about cultures that maybe didn't focus on that? How would they be able to survive if another empire came crashing in? How is that fair, first of all? I just want to say that. And I know, like, whoever's listening above, but how is that fair that a culture gets built on pure essences of knowledge and wisdom, and they're building, crops, and they all are teaching, and they go in these schools, like they have this beautiful culture, right? How is it fair that because they didn't decide to put 80% of their resources into their warriors, right? How is it fair that they then get destroyed? Well, what if those traits are something that is used against us, is what I'm saying.
If you enjoyed today's video on Anonymous Official, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching and sticking with us.